you had a back surgery.
L5-S1 microdiscectomy, yeah, because I couldn't move, basically. I literally couldn't walk. I had so many people say to me, like, don't get surgery, don't get surgery, don't get surgery. It's the worst thing you could do. But I was so disillusioned. I was known as like being so sporty as a child. And as soon as that was taken away from me, I didn't know how to cope. Before I had surgery and after I had surgery was the same amount of pain. It didn't do anything. When I was at university, I started like doing drugs and drinking. What I love about Whealth, and it talks about the whole holistic side of chronic pain. Probably the biggest thing about overcoming chronic pain is recognizing that you have a choice. There's no comparison on the worth of the costs there between surgery and Whealth. I recommend Whealth to anyone I know who's going through chronic pain. If anyone was listening, considering Whealth or surgery, you know, as someone who's had done both, it's a no-brainer for me. Like, the Whealth thing is actually the thing that will create sustainable change. I went for a trail run yesterday with two of my friends. I literally said to them on the run, the reason I feel pain-free is because I don't let pain dictate my actions.
Welcome to the Whealth Podcast. Today's guest of honor is Ben from the UK, correct?
Yes, thanks, Cam. It's great to be here.
Awesome. And Ben, you know, I'll let you take the floor in a little bit, but you've been through a lot. Your story is one of the coolest to me that we have. We have thousands of members, honestly, a lot of insane stories, but you've been through back surgery, sciatica, two disc herniations, years of chronic pain. I know that you dropped out of university. You were a semi-pro athlete, got into drinking, depression. And now here we are years later. You are training for a marathon, lifting again. You mentioned moving freely. I saw some videos of you deadlifting again. So I know you went through this crazy up and down out of that chronic pain cycle, that back surgery that didn't seem to fix everything. So first off, Ben, I want to say welcome. Thanks, proud of your perseverance through the ups and downs. I know that's a ton of work. Thank you for trusting us with the Limitless program. But why don't we start maybe with this one thing that I know that you're doing right now? You're training for a marathon and you are going to go run to the hospital that you got back surgery. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah. Crazy story. I was, I was waiting for surgery for a long time. So like throughout the entirety of the process of kind of like through chronic pain was like, I kind of had my original injury and then kind of rehabbed it okay, and then had a kind of second really significant moment for me in my injury, which was actually from a chiropractic adjustment when I was studying to be a chiropractor. And it really messed me up and it really knocked my confidence. And I think I kind of, just kind of left that feeling very, very low. And, you know, obviously you said about studying, leaving that, I kind of lost a lot of faith in some things there, kind of like techniques and tools. And then when I had the back surgery, I had it in this hospital that was just outside of Salisbury. So I live in Bournemouth on the south coast of the UK. And I kind of had the surgery, which I'm sure I'll talk about the kind of decision-making process a little bit later around that, and why I chose to have surgery. You know, even though I knew I didn't want it, even though I was kind of, you know, against it, I was not necessarily in the right place or the right, like, you know, I think with chronic pain, you know, you're not able to see necessarily very clearly. And sometimes you make decisions that actually are counterproductive even for yourself. So yeah, I had the back surgery, and then I kind of, you know, this last year doing Whealth, I've kind of, you know, gone from strength to strength. And then I joined a local run club near where I am kind of this time last year, to kind of be like, I want to run again. And I started doing like 5Ks very slowly, kind of like working out how that felt and how I wanted to respond to it and what my body was saying about that and what my head said about it. And I just, you know, I loved running before. Running, you know, is such a brilliant way of, you know, releasing tension and anxiety. It makes me feel free. I feel kind of like, I'm not going to say flying because I think people will cringe and laugh if I said that, but I think
like you're flying.
It does a little bit, you know. I think, you know, and then just coincidentally, I can't remember exactly the moment, but I think I was sat with my wife and I said, I wonder, you know, I think this was like 6 months ago. I said, I wonder how far it is from where I live to the hospital I had surgery in, because I knew it was like a kind of distance that was like a significant distance, but I didn't really know. And I had a look and it was like 26 miles. And I was like,
my gosh.
I was like, right, this feels like, you know, a coincidence. And it feels like, and I kind of just posed it to my wife. I was like, wouldn't it be an amazing thing, you know, just to be able to say, okay, draw a line in the sand. I will talk about how, you know, just because I'm doing that, that doesn't mean that I'm like, you know, now pain free forever. Like that's not true and not realistic. But a hugely significant thing for me to say yes, and I think that's a huge thing with chronic pain, a huge thing I've learned on Whealth, is the ability to say yes rather than say no. And I think I just saw this as an opportunity to say yes to something and be able to kind of like, you know, do that, train for that, have something intentional, you know, is a big part of kind of like moving forward as well, having a target. And yeah, man, a big part of that as well was how the hospital said to me, you know, as I'm sure many people on the Whealth program have heard different diagnoses saying that you can't do something. And the hospital that I chatted to, you know,
So this was after you had your back surgery, you were discharged and they said, hey, Ben, you can never do XYZ.
yeah, they, you know, maybe not as strongly as like never do it, but they were like, running's bad for you. And, you know, you shouldn't really do it that much. And, you know, you should stick to, you know, the classic, you should just do some like bird dogs maybe. And like swimming could be good occasionally and, you know, take it easy. Is genuinely the like the feedback I got. And
From the surgeon or
from the
from...
surgeon, yeah. Yeah.
So how long ago, Ben, did you get back surgery?
So on August 23rd, which is the day I'm running to the marathon, it will be 3 years to the day.
August 23rd, 2022, you had a back surgery.
Yeah.
It was a microdiscectomy.
Yeah. 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 So
And then
L5S1 microdiscectomy. Yeah.
L5S1 microdiscectomy. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of things to talk about here.
Sorry.
No, this is awesome. This is why I wanted you on the podcast. It's incredible. So you, from my understanding, Ben, you had 2 disc herniations. So you kind of had a few different bouts of injuries, right? There was a time in your life when it sounded like you had back pain and sciatica, a few disc herniations. You seemed to rehab it. Then you were studying for to become a chiropractor, right, in university, and you got a chiropractic adjustment, and then that kind of cascaded another set of pain. And then you got a back surgery. And now 3 years later, in about a month from today, roughly, maybe 5-6 weeks, you're going to go run a marathon to that hospital you got the surgery at. So why don't we just kind of like roughly lay out the timeline? You know, when was that first injury that kind of started chronic pain, and what does that timeline look like?
Yeah, totally. So yeah, 5 years ago or so, I was, you know, I'm 6'3", so I'm quite a big guy, and I was weightlifting. I was probably like upwards of about 17 stone. I know the metrics are different, but I was upwards 17 stone. You know, like maybe 110 kg or something like that. And I was I was a big guy.
Wow.
I don't know if that's the right, like, don't mark me down if that's the wrong.
110 kg, my quick math would probably be 245 pounds.
Sure. I don't know what the pounds is, but
That's pretty big.
I was a big guy.
I'm 6'2" and like 200.
Yeah,
so
right.
I cannot imagine being another 45 pounds. So you were lifting a lot?
I was dirty bulking. I was eating like thousands of calories a day. I was like, you know, my friends would make fun of me because they'd come home and I'd have like 2 plates of food and they'd be like, who's coming over? And I'd be like, no one. And so just eating on my own. But I was this huge guy and I was kind of fully ego lifting. I was going, you know, the whole classic thing, you know, even though I was a semi-pro athlete growing up and I did a lot of sport, you know, I think there's some kind of camaraderie about the gym and like going to it and, you know, the ego lifting, and there was no warm up. There was no thought about core or stability or breathing or kind of mobility. You know, there was nothing in there about that. I just went in, I said, okay, let's see if I can do like 1 rep maxes and like max it out. And then I was doing clean and jerk, because I saw another guy do it, honestly. And like at the time, CrossFit was a real big thing, and which it kind of still is now, obviously, but it was like really kind of spiking at the time. And I saw a guy in the gym do some clean and jerk, and I was like, sweet, let me try that for the first time, basically. And I did it, and yeah, I felt like I did it, and I kind of felt something, but it wasn't necessarily too extreme. And then I remember the next day waking up, like basically not being able to walk. And I was just gone. And do you know what I did? Actually, I felt something tweaking my back, and I went home and I decided to run it off. And I did a 5K as soon as I got home, and I was determined to just push through because I'd never had an injury ever. This was the first injury I'd ever had.
How old were you at that time?
What was that, 5 years ago? 24?
Okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
we're about the same age. I'm 28.
Yeah. So I'm 29. Yeah. So I was like, that was the first injury I'd ever had. And so I decided to run it off. And the next day I couldn't walk and I had to call in sick. I was working as a teacher assistant at school, and I had to take 2 weeks off because I couldn't move, basically. I literally couldn't walk. I was sat in a chair.
Were you feeling the nerve sciatica at that time?
Yeah, I felt definitely the classic just stiffness, like inability to like move, like an incredible kind of like core tension. And yeah, I got the classic sciatic symptoms, the real bad like pain on the back of the leg when you're trying to go to sleep, and kind of like that burning sensation. So yeah, that was the first time I'd really experienced an injury like that.
Yeah, you had that injury, and then there was, that was 5 years ago. You got the surgery 3 years ago. So what did those 2 years in between the surgery look like?
Yeah, crazy. So I actually rehabbed from that first back injury quite well. I started looking at videos and all that kind of stuff. I actually followed Andrew back in the day, and kind of started using some of his like techniques and tools, way back when.
Just from following him on Instagram. So you never had bought a program from him before. You were just kind of following the free stuff.
Yep.
That's so cool. So cool.
Yeah. So I did that, and I actually rehabbed it pretty well. I started intermittent fasting. I started implementing like core and kind of breath work, and did that, and I kind of healed from that really well. And I actually probably got in one of the best shapes of my life over the next like 4 or 5 months, which was amazing. And then because in that time I was kind of in between jobs working out what to do, and because I developed this kind of like, as you do with any chronic pain or like any significant pain, you develop an almost kind of obsession of it. And I started diving quite deeply into like, the kind of neurology and the kind of biology of the whole thing. And I decided to apply to chiropractic university, and I got in. And then it's so funny, honestly, you'll laugh at this, but I went to the first day of my chiropractic college, like foundation degree. And I remember we were walking around and my back started feeling a bit stiff. I'd probably done a bit too much running or something like that. I was fine, but like my back was really stiff. And I asked one of the trainee chiropractors to give me an adjustment. So not when I talk about chiropractic, there's like definitely some goodness in there. I don't want to like badmouth all chiropractic. I think there's some goodness in there. I just had a bad experience. But I remember having a trainee, like a kind of young person, and he was like, "Yeah, I'd love to like do an adjustment on you." And he laid me down on the bench, and I was a little bit scared anyway. I think I entered into it with a lot of fear and tension anyway, which doesn't help. And he kind of did this rotational, through the SI kind of rotational adjustment, and I felt this electric shock on my whole leg down to my big toe, and I just went. Like, I just thought, what have I just done? Like, that feels really significant. Like, I've really damaged something here. And then what happened after that was I never recovered, basically. Long story short is, from that moment was when it really started deteriorating. And I was at university, and I think there was kind of like such a kind of like a mix of things that contributed towards me like really diving into that chronic pain, as there is for anyone. What I love about Whealth, and it talks about the whole holistic side of chronic pain, which is so true. And I came into that with a lot of resentment, fear, and anxiety. And then when I was at university, I started like doing drugs and drinking, and was just kind of being a bad person in lots of different ways as well. And my diet left, I wasn't fasting anymore, and I was just like, in debt and all that kind of stuff. And I really, and people come up to me like, "Oh, you're gonna join the rugby team?" And I'd be like, "I can't, my back hurts." And like they'll be like, "Oh, you're gonna join this team?" And I'd be like, "I can't, my back hurts." And I think one of the worst things about chronic pain is your comparison of other people and your bitterness and resentment of other people. That kind of consistent narrative you have that's like, that's not fair. They get to live their life. I'm stuck. I don't deserve this. And that definitely extended to like the other people on my course, and all that kind of stuff. And I really dived really deeply into that. And then when that year ended, that foundation year ended, I knew I was leaving. I was like, I'm not going to continue this, partly because I lost faith in chiropractic, but partly because I was like, I literally feel like I might actually die if I just continue in this way. I was in such a bad way. I was like, I
Wow.
genuinely need to get out of this situation because I was just so low.
Just mentally and physically, like back pain, sciatica, and then also everything that you're talking about.
Yeah. And like, I think, for someone like myself who, I mean, anyone who does consistent sport will admit how much kind of it contributes towards their complete holistic well-being. And
Yeah. Your identity, right?
yeah, literally. And I was known as like being so sporty as a child and all that kind of stuff. And then as soon as that's taken away from you, which is like, exercise is like your coping mechanism. And as soon as that was taken away from me, I didn't know how to cope. I didn't know how to do anything or deal with it. I just said yes to everything that I knew was wrong for me. I knew that it was wrong for me, but I couldn't stop myself from doing it because it was quick gratification, this kind of quick success.
Interesting.
Um,
What do you mean by that?
it almost gave me like a bit of an excuse, like like I'll come on to later about like probably the biggest thing about um overcoming chronic pain is recognizing that you have a choice. And if you don't take responsibility for something, it's way easier than starting the choosing of that you can do something. And so when you're like drinking or when you're in debt or when you're kind of like in denial, that feels a lot easier than trying to start the process of healing yourself. Like it's a quicker gratification to drink and to be like, well, this is the reason that I'm not moving forward, blah blah blah, than going for a 50-meter walk if that's what you needed to do that day.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's some people can get in such a spiral or maybe comfortable with the familiarity, even though the familiarity is such a bad place, then recognize some sort of new vision for themselves, which is not comfortable. It's not familiar, but then you do have to take some responsibility. And then you can also be like, hey, I want to be out of pain, but life has thrown other plans my way and, poor me and, my life was taken away from me, but I want to get better, but I clearly can't. So I'm going to turn to other vices. And so for you, that was drinking and drugs. And then you were mentioning debt too.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. I just, it's way easier to blame other things, isn't it, than blame yourself. So I think I used those as a scapegoat to like almost justify why I was in the place that I was in at the time.
Were you blaming that chiropractor as well?
Do you know what? Even to this day, I 100% don't blame him. He in no way, like, I think for a long time I did like, because I'd still see him around the halls and I definitely look at him like, you ruined my life. I hate you. I definitely looked at him like that, but like, it's 100% not his fault.
Right.
I know that for sure. I just like, as I said, it's so much easier to blame someone else for this stuff than actually accept responsibility.
Well, that's what I was really curious about, what you meant, like who you were blaming in your life, because that was something you left us a really detailed Google review and you started talking about, the debt and the depression and the drinking and blaming other people, and you have a choice and responsibility. So I was like, man, this is someone who gets it. He's really been through it. So I was curious, like who you were. Was it people that you were blaming, or was it that mindset where you're like, this is not fair that they all get to have a better life and I'm this semi-pro athlete. I want to be better, but I can't.
Yeah, a bit of both, I think. Yeah, a bit of both. I think, you know, I even got to a point in one stage where I was like, you know, the resentment extended towards like children and me being like walking around and them being like these kind of like joyful creatures who like hadn't experienced anything. And I was looking at them like, how dare you have this amount of freedom? How dare you get to just like, live pain free? And I think particularly to some of my peers, like my school peers or the chiropractic peers that I was with as well, like kind of seeing them being able to play rugby and play sport and run and things like that, I just, I couldn't handle it. It was absolutely horrible. And then I blame myself as well, definitely, like in that moment, but not in like a healthy, activating way, not in a way of like, I blame myself and therefore I should do something about it. It was like, I blame myself and therefore I hate myself. And it's like, that's certainly like a spiral rather than like, there's certainly two ways you can access it, isn't it? But at that time, I just didn't have the willingness to blame myself and therefore say like, well, it's also my responsibility, then I should do something about that. I just blame myself and then make myself, kind of hatred, inner hatred just kind of spiraled and kept going.
So when you first had that injury about 5 years ago, it sounded like you successfully rehabbed it. You were following the shirtless dude on Instagram. You kind
I
of
was, yeah.
changed some things about your working out routine and
Yeah.
got excited about the body, and you wanted to go study chiropractic in university. You had that adjustment, that reset a flare up, and then that injury moving forward, you clearly could not dig yourself out. What do you think was different about like the first experience of pain versus this one that ultimately led you to a surgery?
Oh, great question. um, okay, I think I have an answer to this. I think the first time I did it, I had the quickness and kind of non-experience enough to just do something about it straight away. So I think because I had 2 weeks off, kind of just like not doing anything, I then hadn't experienced anything like that. So I think I was kind of quite determined to get back to it. And then when and I saw quite quick results from that first time. I think I saw quite, quick. I felt better very quickly, and I think the second time, because I like had that adjustment and then I immediately shut down. I think the longer you're in chronic pain and accept it, the more it actually becomes real. Um, and the second time, I obviously spent that whole year just drinking and getting in debt, and all I was doing in that time was really just solidifying the narrative. And a lot of time, the narrative or the mental narrative we have actually manifests in our body, doesn't it? I certainly felt that. So actually, the worse I felt mentally, the worse I felt physically. Therefore, the worse I felt mentally. Therefore, the worse I felt physically. And it was just this spiral that just kind of really spiral that really embedded itself. And then when I left, so that was like a year at the chiropractic university of me just saying, I can't do this. It's someone else's fault. My life is ruined. There's nothing I can do about this. And I just kept on spiraling there. And then when I came out of chiropractic university, this is a bit of a left turn, by the way. You're going to be like, what the heck? I won a competition on an app to make music. And I flew out to Norway. This was during lockdown. I flew out to Norway to make music out there at this like pop Norwegian, like a pop music school thing. Cause I work as a musician as well. And when I was there is a point to this. When I was there, because of the way Norway is set up, it's dark and unbelievably cold for like 9 months of the year, and like the outside is just inaccessible. And my job for 9 months or like 10 months was literally sitting in a studio writing sad songs about myself and how I felt. And like while I was there, because I was so cold, I ate like rubbish. I sat down the entire time, thousands of hours of sitting down. I would go to bed at like 4 a.m., and because there wasn't really an option to do like any fitness or like do any like self improvement. If anything, there was encouragement to have less self improvement. Being an artist, self sabotage is certainly something that's like kind of promoted. So
Really?
yeah, definitely. Like, if you look at I don't know, some of my artistic heroes, kind of feeling sorry for yourself is like actually like a good thing because it inspires your art or whatever. But I had 9 months to fester in the previous year of debt, and I had 9 months to just sit in that continuously. And I put on loads of weight. I was eating like a full pack of pasta, a full thing of steak, mozzarella, beer, hummus, a whole bag of like tortilla chips every evening. Every
You
single
just let
evening, I'd have
yourself
the same
go.
thing. I proper let myself go. And, that year I just really, I would say the chiropractic year, like while I was there, was like the initiating. And then the year after that was like the stagnancy period where I just like accepted it. So the chiropractic, I was in denial about it, but kind of still doing things that were really negative. And then I got to the chiropractic thing and I just accepted that this was my life now and that I would never be able to really do anything like that again. And I just sat in that and just said, okay, if this is my life, it's crap. If I'm just going to be depressed, then that's so be it. I'll just lean into that depression basically.
So what led you to this right there?
That feels exposing.
Right?
I look exactly the same. That's so weird. Um, um,
So
what
this
le-
was this was post back surgery, right?
That was post back surgery.
Yeah.
So yeah, what led me to that place? So I came
And
back.
I
I ca-
see this was your MRI,
yeah.
right? Was that right before? Does that feel weird or hard to look at?
Hmm. How does that feel to look at that? I think like yes and no. Like yes, because I just feel like I feel really sad. Sometimes I still feel, and I think this is really important, particularly with chronic pain. Like I don't, when I look at that, there is a lot of emotions that go on for me. One of the emotions is yes, I feel so proud of myself for where I'm at now. Another one of the emotions is like, oh, I almost mourn those 3 or 4, 5 years where I felt like I didn't have a life, you know, and sometimes I look at that and think like, oh, I am genuinely really sad that that had a hold of my life, and still is a part of my life. Like, you know, um, I wish I could sit here and say like categorically, like I wish that, oh, I wish that didn't happen, or what am I trying to say? I wish I could say that like I'm glad that that happened, but I'm still not. Like I'd still rather that not happen, but like I'm really grateful for the process from like that to now, because actually that shaped me more than anything in my life. Really that kind of that process. So there's a lot of emotions that go on for me when I see that picture. Um, but mostly proud. But what led me to the surgery, really, what led me to that point when I came back from Norway, I think because I follow the shirtless dude, and like I even have a couple of like friends who are doctors here. I had so many people say to me like, "Don't get surgery, don't get surgery, don't get surgery. It's the worst thing you could do." But I was so disillusioned, and I started like, there's so much information out there online, and some of it's helpful, and some of it's not helpful at all. And I think I started losing sense of what was like real, what wasn't real, what was helpful, what wasn't helpful, and I started kind of looking at different stories of people who had the surgery and it had been successful. And, I think with chronic pain, as soon as you latch onto a narrative, it's very hard to lose it, particularly if it feels like a solution. So I latched onto that idea that surgery was the only solution I now had to be able to change and rectify my situation. And so I kind of just said, all right, and I knew I was offered it on the NHS. So I just said, okay, let's just do it. And I kind of just bit the bullet and got in there. And then before I really had time to process, it was like kind of like a 3 or 4 week period. I said from when I said yes to getting the surgery in, and I just said yes, and then there I was, and I had surgery.
Do you remember what the MRI said exactly? It was a microdiscectomy for the L5S1. Do you remember how big the herniation was? Or okay, we can pop the MRI up on the screen. But yeah, it's interesting too, right? You're thinking in that dark place in your life, there's nothing else I can do to get my life better except for the surgery. But I'm sure now looking back on it, you're like, well, I was in a depressive slump. I was eating all that pasta and I was drinking and I was not taking care of myself. Like a million other things that looking back on, you're like, wow, I was not controlling all those. But look, I mean, everyone, like, I had an L5S1 herniation, and I personally, I'm fortunate that I came across Andrew like pretty quickly in the grand
Mm-hmm.
scheme of things, maybe within a year or so of the pain. And I'm just fortunate that I found him. He helped me out. Cause like, who's to say what I would or wouldn't have done if that carried on another 3 years and I was spinning my tires? Cause man, I don't wish anyone to have sciatica like that. Like, I really don't wish that upon anyone. It is torturous, it's hellish, it's horrible, it takes over, it's all consuming. As you're explaining some of those things, you reminded me of the way that I thought a little bit too, like
Mm.
I tried not to think like this, but I I was a really good athlete. I think I am still a really good athlete, but when you just do athletics your entire life and you're like, I want to be in the gym. I'm the hardest working person out there. I'm a dog. And then it's like, I can't even get out of bed. It's like, why does someone else get that opportunity? Like, I would outwork them truly if I could, but I'm in so much pain that I can't. It
Mm.
doesn't seem fair. And so I understand how people get going down that pathway, but then also too, like, you got to pull back and be like, this way of thinking is not helping me.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, I hear you so much on that. Like, yeah, I hear you. That feeling frustration is so real, isn't it?
Yeah. And I
Looking at
think
other
it's
people. Yeah.
it's it's totally normal to have. It's not, I don't think that people with injuries shouldn't have those feelings.
Mm.
I think I don't want to make a judgment or statement about like getting depressed, but there's a difference between like feeling depressed and falling into a cycle of depression, or feeling like envious or resentful and then turning into a resentful person. Like, now this is what I do and who I am. And again, I think it can be easy if you're not finding the solutions to your back pain or shoulder pain or injury. I think it can easily turn from the feelings to like a state of being, but then that's where it can be even more challenging to really break free and get yourself out of that situation, which I think ultimately, like, you want to be out of regardless.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah. It really becomes your identity for such a long time, doesn't it? And, I think, like, as you said, if you've been such a hard worker for such a long time, you now suddenly have an excuse not to work hard in something that can be easy as well. Kind of, being able to kind of like, once again, coming back to the narrative, but like, once again, having the opportunity to not accept responsibility is like, is also like quite, that's just something you can do. And that's something that's why it's easy to make that your identity, because actually you have an excuse for not doing things.
Right. It's there is a comfortability in that. Like,
Yeah.
well, I said, like, for instance, like, you're signing up for a marathon. And it's like, well, I signed up for the marathon and like my Achilles flared up. So, I wanted to do the thing, but I don't have to.
Yeah.
It's like, well, could you get on the bike and go bike right now?
Yeah, right. Yeah, what options do you have? It's so interesting, actually. I was actually just reflecting, like, as you were saying about that whole like dog mentality. Like, I used to be able to like push my body so hard, and I'm actually really relearning the process of like how much I can go and how little I should go as well. And I think, like, because it's been 5 years of like cautiousness, when I'm like doing my tempo or interval sessions now, I'm really having to relearn the process of like, okay, this feels really hard, but it's okay. Like, oh, okay, you're doing like 3 reps on like something that's heavy. Like, my initial, like, I posted the video of me doing a deadlift the other day, and I actually saw a friend in the gym, and he was like, oh, you should give this a go. And I've been doing hip hinges this past year. Like, I feel pretty dialed in with my hip hinge now, having done like literally thousands of them this last year. And I've never once thought like, oh, I should go back to the deadlift. And it was actually seeing my friend in the gym and him saying like, man, you should come and do this. Like, you should give this a go. And I like came up to the bar a little bit like, okay. Like, I'm just going to give this a go and see how this feels. And I'll be really cautious about it. And then literally as I went down, I was like, why are you being so cautious? Like, you're really strong now. Like, you've literally done thousands of these hip hinges, and all, the only difference between that and this really is just like where your hands are. You're, rather than holding a kettlebell here, which is what I've been doing, a kettlebell or kind of a medicine ball, rather than doing that here and kind of, the only thing is just putting a couple of things together and then having your hands in front of you here. So I kind of approached that with a real different mentality, and it really helped me to, because as I said, like, I think the entirety of what I love about Whealth and what I kind of am learning about pain is that, actually, this is probably the thing I think is most important to communicate. One of the things that I found so challenging about chronic pain, and one of the things that I thought I'd have, was this before and after moment. This like, now I'm fixed. That's what I was expecting. So in that first couple of years of me being like it really in the depths, I was, my friends are like, can you come and play football? Can you come play this? Can you do this? I would always say no, because I was like, I'm still waiting to feel completely better in all aspects until I do that. And that's such an unrealistic expectation to put over yourself. And if you wait, you'll wait forever, basically. That's something that was really a huge catalyst for me. And I put that in my Google review, which was like, rather than my goal now to be pain-free, which is completely unrealistic for anyone. And that's something that really helped me, was recognizing that everyone's in pain. And even, sometimes when you think before these, injuries, you think that you were pain-free before them because you've got this glaze of your like previous life before it happened, which isn't true, and, it's been really helpful for me, that narrative, which I actually heard from Andrew in kind of like one of the kind of coaching calls I watched, or somewhere on the Facebook group, that was around like the goal. Oh no, maybe it was a book that he sent. Anyway, I've lots of the stuff. And I read something that was like, the goal isn't to be pain-free, but to be stronger than yesterday. And that is true. That is the thing, isn't it? That really is the narrative. And that's something I'm still learning now, even though I'm doing this marathon, even though I like, people are going to watch this and be like, oh, you like, he did it, amazing. And it's like, yes, I did, but I'm also doing it still. and I'm still
You're
going
still
through the
working at it.
process. I'm still working at it for sure,
Yeah,
and that is the most important thing. I think the difference now between now and then, one of the biggest differences is just my ability to say yes rather than no.
sure.
Yeah.
I think that's so cool. There's an evolution that goes through, and I think from our perspective, what people think that they want versus I think what people really want is different, right? So when you say like Ben is pain free, people in pain are like, oh my gosh, that's what I want. And sometimes I think that can be inspiring for them to do the rehab program, to try Whealth, to do something, right? And then you go through and you get these incredible results. But then I think what you realize is like free from pain. And I'm still trying to figure out how this idea works because of course, no one is ever going to be pain free, but also it's difficult to communicate that. I think sometimes saying pain free can be it can be detrimental, but it can also be helpful to communicate. And what I mean by that is I so desperately wanted to be pain free from sciatica at that point in time that the thought of potentially becoming pain free and doing Andrew's program was actually motivating to me. And so I have not had sciatica for 7 years. And I'm like, okay, in that sense, I am pain free and I'm healed.
Mm,
But I've had like a shoulder flare up from benching and Achilles from running and stuff like that. So now that I've gone through such an intense experience, and little things pop up here and there, I go, I realize, hey, I'm never going to not be pain free for as long as I'm moving, but also the percentage of pain that I deal with, that horrendous pain is a zero point 0.5 out of 10 or 1% out of 100. So it's like, I don't know how to work with that idea because I think sometimes it can be helpful to say, this person had an enormous amount of pain and it is like almost entirely gone. I don't think there's anything wrong with looking for that, but also I think you want to set realistic expectations as well that, hey, in the future, you're going to get smarter and wiser with your body and how to train. And I'm sure you will. But if
yeah.
you're training for a marathon and you keep trying to push and push, you might have a little dip again and be like, oh man, I have some pain. But I've gone through this way bigger experience. So I
Yeah.
know I can get better.
Yeah, I literally felt that yesterday. I went for a trail run yesterday with two of my friends, and my body felt quite sluggish and slow. My kind of foot was hurting, and my like hip was hurting, and I was kind of like, oh, I feel awful. I think the difference now is like I was even saying I literally said to them on the run because they were asking me about it, obviously, and I said the difference for me now is that I don't, because the reason I feel pain free is because I don't let pain dictate my actions. So like, I still have pain, but pain isn't the controller or dictator of my choices or what I do. And like, today after this podcast, I'm doing a strength workout on the beach with my dad. Before, if I'd like gone for a run or like tried to go for a run, which I did a couple of times, in the real like dark place, I'd go for a run and I'd like seize up and I'd like, I'd like core brace the entire time. And then, if I had any pain whatsoever, I'd get home and be like, what a terrible idea. I've just ruined my back and it's just made it so much worse. And I think the difference now is I was like, yesterday, I was like, okay, my right foot hurt and my right heel hurt. Okay, I'm going to, try and strengthen. I'm going to do some footwork this evening. I'm going to like get in the sand and really kind of like strength. I'm going to try and do some glute stuff. I might do lots of like range of motion through my hips. And it's just assessing, really. It's just this consistent assessing. But I think, as I said, like, I really understand what you're saying around like the pain-free narrative. It's a challenging one to work out, isn't it? I think for me, what it means personally is like, I still have pain and I will for the rest of my life, I imagine, in different areas. So I will never be necessarily like completely pain free because there is a percentage of pain there, on the everyday, but I just don't let it stop me from doing what I want to do now. It's just not, it's not the deciding factor of my future anymore.
Sure.
It's like just a part of my life, but it's not something that stops me from
Sure.
living my life.
So I got to not let pain dictate your life though. Do you still, it's subjective, but my assumption is that the level of pain that you currently have post surgery after the rehab is less than what you had before by a
Yeah.
lot.
100%. Like, to put into perspective, like, before, so before I had surgery and after I had surgery was the same amount of pain. It didn't do anything. Classic.
Just immediately after you get out of the surgery, do you still feel the same symptoms?
I was like so expecting, I was so expecting because like I remember I had the surgery and I didn't sleep the night. Like kind of, I was awake the whole night and I kind of was like reflecting on the whole experience. And then, obviously there were like a week you're going to kind of like sit in this hilarious looking cast around your waist. And I was like sat and I was watching the cricket on TV and I was like, oh, I can't wait for like a couple of weeks where I feel amazing and I'm going to be able to get back to my life. And then a couple of weeks came and I was walking 100 meters down the road thinking, okay, this is some slow progress. Can't wait for the next month where I feel completely pain free. And then a month would go by and I'd be like, yeah, I feel kind of the same as I did before my surgery. I wonder if this was a good idea. And then, yeah, just obviously, kind of from there, because there was no like sudden, BCAD moment. It was kind of just this like, oh, great, that did nothing. I'll just, accept it again, which was just so rubbish, obviously.
So
Yeah.
the NHS, that is that National Health Service. Okay. So so you got approved for a surgery through the NHS. So does that just mean they completely cover the surgery? Okay. So I got to imagine when you're thinking about surgery and you're like, oh, I want it and I don't have to directly pay. That's probably, you're like, oh, it's going to fix me.
Yeah, I know a lot of your like audience and customers is obviously based in the US where it's completely different. You have to make that kind of like
It's a crapshoot here too.
Yeah, man, is that you got to make that huge monetary choice, and I think, yeah, it was easier for me to say yes because it was free. But I wouldn't recommend it. I try
It
now
was
to
free,
live.
but it came with a cost.
Yeah, it came with a
It
cost,
always does, right? I mean,
Yeah.
even when people are factoring in, hey, should I spend right under $1,000 to do the Limitless program? That's a cost, right? There's always a cost with all of these things.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like, there's no comparison on the worth of the costs there between surgery and wealth. Even like, I'll say that out loud for you guys and anyone that wants to hear it. Like obviously, I didn't have to pay for my surgery, but like if I did, the comparison, I consistently to this day, and I'm genuinely not just saying this, I recommend Whealth to anyone I know who's going through chronic pain. And I also still to this day cannot believe how little Whealth costs. I know that sounds a bit like, I'm not saying that in terms of like you need to make it more expensive for people. I'm saying it in more like I can't believe that even like, I was able to access that and do that at such a little cost. Like everything that you access, the community, the kind of like longevity, the like programs, the consistency and feedback, that all of that, I was like, oh my gosh, like I'd do that 1,000 times again, like 100%. Like there's no doubt in my mind that I'd want to do that again. And yeah, if anyone was listening, considering like Whealth or surgery, as someone who's had done both, like, it's a no-brainer for me. Like the Whealth thing is actually the thing that will create sustainable change. The surgery is like, it's a redundant thing that doesn't make any difference.
Yeah, I think we'll see if that ends up being a good business play. The pricing's always it's always like it's a funny thing, right? Because I've had people be like, "Yo, your program should be $5,000," and then
Yeah.
I've also had people who say, "Can
Yeah.
I get the program for free?" And I think what it comes down to is, first off, I think we're definitely pricing it well under what it's worth and what we could charge.
I think so.
But also, too, I think we want this experience for people to be like, they walk out of the program and they get tenfold, 100-fold what they would have paid on the back end. Because then I think we're changing people's lives and creating evangelists. Like the way that I look at it, I still look back at what I paid, for Andrew's program way back, and being out of pain. I'm like, dude, I would have done anything. If I had $100,000 at that time, I would have paid him $100,000 to feel this good.
Exactly. And I think that's hopefully what you took away was like it was less of a commentary on like you need to make it more. It was more of just like it was a no-brainer for me to be able to invest in that. And still to this day, I can't believe, not around the actual how much it was worth it is what I'm really trying to get across.
Yes, yeah. not even just the price that you paid. It's, yes, that's one factor. It's the price that people pay to enter our program. But then I think what they realize is like, dude, I have so much material to work through. It's insane. I was chatting with a member the other day and he was like texted me. He's like, hey, I'm 75% better in 2 months. I got a kid coming in the way in 2 months. And he was like, I now had the realization that I'm going to be a father that I want to be because I'm not in pain. And 5 months ago, I didn't know that. Like five
Crazy.
months ago, I felt bad for pushing my wife to get pregnant because I really wanted the kid. She was kind of unsure. Push for the kid. Now I think we're bringing a kid into this world that I can't take care of. I start your program 5 months ago. Now 2 months away from the birth of my a future son, and I'm like, I know I'm going to be the dad that my wife and my son are going to want to be around. He's like, there's no way that I could put a price tag on that. So, but also the thing is, he's done the program every single day. He's talking about the books that we suggested. He's talking about going to the coaching calls. He's talking about getting feedback and coaching from us. I'm like,
Exactly.
yes, this guy has utilized everything that we've put into the program to a T. And I was like, it just makes me so happy.
Good.
It's not just this theoretical thing that Katie, Andrew, myself are thinking like, we think they're going to need this, this, and this. It's like, we know there's value, and this guy has done everything that we've offered, and now he's reaping the results.
Yeah, exactly. I hear that, that's amazing. And I think, attached to that is probably every person who's done Whealth feels that, like, because as we all know, it's such a huge part of our lives. Like, the chronic pain, it really overwhelms and completely overtakes any aspect of our life. Not for me to like come into that story, but like even for myself, I think being able to come through this chronic pain like had a huge impact on my relationship with my wife. I mean, we were considering, getting engaged at the time. I was starting the program, and like I was in a really bad place commitment wise, and now we're married and have a house, and like, I can't obviously say that like Whealth was like the only direct catalyst towards that, but I think like Whealth in turn affecting my outlook on life, and because of my chronic pain and my back surgery, would have had a huge impact on like, my ability to actually like accept the life I was in and be able to move forward in it, and I think, for probably, most people in Whealth, like myself, has a story attached to that similar, and this guy has that story, and another
Yeah.
person will have a different story. And, it's amazing. It's amazing. Like the impact it has, isn't it? And it
Yeah.
must feel good to know. It must feel good to know that you're doing a good work. You're really helping people out. It's brilliant. I really love it. I genuinely mean that.
For sure. I think what was really cool too, because I remember his conversation, and like on the site, we say, hey, 30-day money back, because we want to encourage people. Like,
Yeah.
you truly can try this program for a full month before committing. And so I remember this one individual, we were chatting on the phone, and he was asking a lot about the 30-day money back. Hey, how does it work? What if it doesn't work for me? How am I going to get my money back? And I was like, hey, I will personally send you the money back. I promise you. Like, we're not going to hold your money if you don't like the program. But I was kind of cracking up because I remember he was almost concerned about trying to find maybe a plan B if it didn't work. But I was just so excited to know that he really, that it went the other way, in a way that he couldn't imagine. And I left that phone call just recatching back up with him, and I did feel fulfilled. Like, and chatting with you, it makes me so excited, because everyone's got a really cool story. I'm really excited when I hear people did the program and avoided a surgery, or for your case, you used the program after your back surgery to rehab. Because sometimes people will say, oh, I see you guys are helping out a lot of people who avoided a surgery, but I'm different. I had the surgery. I'm like,
Yeah. That's
no, you're
good.
missing the point. Wherever you're at in your life, you have a choice to move forward, and we can help. You can help yourself. So, yeah, thank you for sharing that story.
It's all good.
So after surgery, the miraculous change that you weren't looking for, it did not happen. So what did you, like, how much time after the surgery did it take of kind of suffering to then starting the Whealth program, the Limitless program?
Yeah. Way too long is my initial response. Like, stupidly long of me, like just sitting in the mess, like classic. I think like, how long did it take? I was in Bournemouth for like maybe, yeah, I was in Bournemouth for a year, which is where I'm from on the South Coast. And I was living with my parents. I don't think I worked. I think I was unemployed for most of that time, actually, when I came back. Um, just doing nothing. And then I moved to London with my girlfriend and my wife, and I didn't work for a while as well. She's got some really cool job, and I was just like doing nothing. I literally, my whole days were spent watching like Netflix series. I would just lie in bed and kind of leech off her life a little bit.
Wow.
And then, I was certainly just in those rhythms still from kind of like, coming back from Norway and all that kind of stuff. I was just very depressed and I just didn't want to do anything with my time and my life.
Yeah.
And then I got a job, which was good. I think, I've always been an advocate for like mental health. I got this job that I do now, but I got like kind of the starter. So I've had some promotions to get to this point. But yeah, I started that job in London. And my life started to get a bit better from getting that job. Actually, I was working in a coffee shop just before that job as well, which I didn't like. And I started, in that kind of time to go back to the gym. And I think I was still following Andrew, and from kind of like the experiences that I've had, I started to try and do some things in the gym, and I found that I was still very frustrated. I found that I was just very like plateaued. I wasn't lifting any weights. When I say go to the gym, I'd go to the warm-up section and I'd roll out my mat and I'd do some kind of cat cows and some core stuff. And, I'd like glance over to the guys in the weights and think like, oh, F you kind of vibe. And like, how dare you get to do that? And I'm just sat here like, kind of like, in my like,
that's what I'm going through.
Yeah, right. Just emo music playing in your ears. And then, I kind of just reached a point where I was like, okay, like I feel productive enough in my life because it's a really intense job that I was doing. And I was like, actually, this is it. This was interesting. My job, is to tell young people that they have to activate responsibility in their lives. Otherwise, nothing's going to change for them. That's my job. I'll sit there and say, okay, if you want to change your life, if you want to get into work, that has to start with your attitude. I can't do it for you. You have to do it for yourself. And I'm like coaching these young guys and I'm not doing that for myself. And I'm kind of just, I'm sat there in the mess still, kind of like in this, like, still in this denial period of plateau and not doing anything. And I just said, okay, something's got to change. And then I remember I moved back down to Bournemouth for a promotion in the role. And I said, okay, like I quite like marking moments in my life. Sometimes that's helpful. Sometimes that's not. I marked the moment and said, okay, here's an opportunity for me to do something about it. I've been on the edge, on the fence of like saying yes to Whealth for such a long time. I know it'll be brilliant, but I was kind of like still coming out of debt a little bit. I wasn't really financially stable in a stable enough position to say yes. And then when I came back to Bournemouth, because I've had this job, and I was kind of like, okay, I'm going to mark this moment with something that feels significant. I had my doubts when I first started the program. I had my doubts about if it would actually work or if it wouldn't work, obviously, as anyone would when they're coming into this kind of thing. And it feels like, even though I just said it's like such an insignificant amount of money for the worth that you get back, but it is a significant amount of money. If you don't understand the impact it's going to have, you can't see that in the future, can you? So definitely. I had my doubts, but I just bit the bullet and said, okay, let's send it. Let's do this. And do you know what? I have the day one pictures on my phone somewhere. I will not get them up, but I've got the day one pictures of me just in my underwear, stood awkwardly at the door like this. And then at the side, and I turned around and I was like so determined to see this change. I'd hate to look at them now, and I'm definitely not going to reflect back on them ever.
So we're not allowed to pop them up here. Maybe you'll send them to me after the podcast. We can crop out the junk. We can crop out the underwear, but it would be cool if you're down later.
All right,
I want to see that side by side.
The only thing about that is that I have to go to my parents' house and take off my t-shirt and stand there, and I'm going to tense because I want like the impact to be like as much as it can be. No, but I can do that. I'm sure I can pick them up, but you have to give me. Awesome. You have to give me 5 minutes to just like, kind of question my life as I send them over to you. But I'm happy to do that. But I remember feeling like, I remember feeling so determined. The biggest impact for me straight away actually was seeing a plan in front of me. That was like the thing for me. When I opened that up, and like obviously there's lots of like onboarding videos and just like you're like going through it and you're like, oh, I want to get stuck in, and I'm watching these videos and it's taking ages. It's kind of how I felt a little bit at the start. But then as soon as I mean, obviously I went through that process and understood the importance of that process. And then as soon as I saw this plan and it was like week 1, day 1, I thought, oh, yes, thank goodness. I've been aimlessly trying to work out how to rehab myself and plateauing for the last like a year or so. I kind of have a good level of knowledge on like the body and things that are good and aren't good and diet and all that kind of stuff. But actually having this like, structured plan to be like, follow this, do this. This is what today looks like. I felt so determined from that moment because it gives you like this kind of like structured process, which is really helpful. And I really enjoyed that first day to be like, I'm coming to the gym with some purpose today, and I know when to start and I know when to finish, and that feels great. So that was
Right.
that was the biggest first win, where I was like, I've done the right thing. I've made a good choice here.
Yeah, I think that's one thing that people who are potentially on the edge for a while, following our Instagram or YouTube or any amount of Instagram or YouTube channels, and you haven't dedicated yourself to something, you're getting so many different pieces of content from all over, and you're just, I'm going to do this and this and this. And when you have all of that info, like you're drinking from a fire hose, it's really difficult to feel like you're organized and making progression and this and that. There is so much comfort in chronic pain when it's already so hard and there's so many things going on in your mind. Take one of those pieces out. Like at least then you don't have
Yeah.
to think about what you're going to do today and tomorrow in terms of the plan. That's why we lay it out for you.
Yeah. And I love that, that sense of like, someone coming alongside you as well. I mean, I can talk about the community a little bit later, which certainly helped, but like, the coming alongside and not feeling like you're doing something alone as well is so huge. Oh my gosh. Chronic pain is so isolating. One of the biggest kind of like things that really gets you is the isolation of it. Even though you see that like millions of people have like back pain, your back pain feels worse than other people's.
Yeah, it's got to be worse than everyone
Yeah,
else's back pain, right? Because
yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah,
me.
yeah. And you don't know all the other things that are pouring into this for me, and you don't know I used to do this, and you don't know that like it's impacting my blah blah blah. And it's true, and it's it's true, and it's real for everyone though as well. It's like it's true. Like having been there for myself, I remember growing up, and my sister had loads of like stuff going on for her, and I always used to be like, oh, you just get over it, man, or like you can just.
Yeah.
Your situation's not that bad. There are other people with worse conditions than you or whatever. And like, when it happens to you, it really does, isolate you. You become an island. You push people away, you kind of, you reject all that kind of stuff. And when I came onto Whealth, I was like, oh man, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. I get to do this with other people, which is great. And yeah, I was speaking to the community now because it's great. And that was such a huge element of it for me as well. Was this ability to go onto that Facebook page and be like, oh, there are other people doing this too at the same time as me. And that feels great. And I can put something in there and connect with a human being rather than connecting with Google search, like how normal is this pain? Does this exercise help with back pain? It's so robotic. And I went into this Facebook community and I was met with real people, going through it at the same time, getting fantastic feedback, was just such a huge element of it as well. And I even, connected with like, some connecting with other people. I even saw on there was this guy, because I know it's this American program, but I went on and there was this guy who had like SI problems, which was mostly what I had was like this sacroiliac joint problems on the right hand side seems to be the thing that I struggled with the most. And there was this guy who lives in Dorset, like round the corner from me, like doing the program as well. And I was like, that's so crazy because it's quite a niche place to live in the
Wow.
UK. And I was like,
What's
that's
his
so
name?
Jordan something, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Jordan Luxford, I think.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. And he had SI pain and was in Dorset. I should say hello to him at some point. I haven't for whatever reason, but like,
Yeah.
I saw that and I was like, oh my word, amazing. Like,
Yeah.
and he was like this successful kind of good looking guy or whatever. And I was like, oh, it feels really encouraging to know that I'm kind of, journeying this with other people and I'm getting to, getting to speak, encouragement. Oh my gosh, that's such an important thing as well. Do you know what? Actually, such a big antidote of like isolation is encouragement. And I got to go, to other people and encourage them in their story and their journey and their process. And I haven't done that in a while, admittedly. I haven't been on the Facebook group for a while because I'm, in it's
Yeah.
bad. Like I'm in a good place and I
Yeah.
don't go there as often, particularly in that first kind of like crisis moment when you first start. You are on there a lot more, I think, as
Yeah.
the journey progresses. I'm actually aiming to get on there a little bit more now, but I
That means that we've done our job if you don't feel the need to jump in. I mean, it's
right,
cool
right,
that you would want to go and encourage other people, but that's what our coaches and other people are there for. But
right.
yeah, I mean, that's a cool, the fact that you feel less reliant on that, you become self-sufficient is incredible.
Yeah. And it was just so nice to be able to be like, you're doing a great job, someone else. That felt great. That's the opposite of like, isolation and
Or
depression.
some of the back pain groups on Facebook or Reddit, or
Right,
you'll just see there's so much negativity around these
right.
injuries, and it becomes this kind of like what you were saying earlier. You recognize that you have the ability in chronic pain to become very negative, resentful of others, blame others, pretty much do anything but truly take responsibility for yourself. So now you have a bunch of unhappy people with back pain, disc herniations, shoulder impingement, whatever the injury is, joining support groups that are more so about, like, it's a festering pool of negativity. Like, maybe to the extent that it's helpful is empathy for other people, that, hey,
Yeah,
I'm sorry you're going through this. This is horrible. And by the way, mine is so bad too. And then everyone's just talking about how bad their pain is. It stops short. It's like it's empathetic potentially. And then there's no action that
that's
follows
it. That's it.
after that. And then you're just stuck.
Well, that's it. That's what I was going to say was like the great thing about the content and Wealth on the Facebook community group is that it's productive. Like all the content on there is about something that you've done as well. Yes, people come on and they say like, hi, I'm Ben, and this is my kind of situation. This is my like story or whatever. But after that, really, it's like, this is what I'm doing about it. And that's like, that's really the main thing, isn't it? Actually, like, as you said, those communities, it's just like, yeah, it's just like, there's no release, there's no movement, there's no kind of like progression there, because it's just like, you're not even accepting it. You're just like, you're just vomiting your information. But like, in order to move forward as Wealth did and does, and I have, so like effectively, it's just by doing the thing. One
Right.
day at a time, you just do the thing, you just start.
So can you take me through, do you have any specific milestones? How long ago did you purchase the Limitless program?
Great question, Cam. I probably should have had a look at that before I came on.
I see. So I'm pulling you up. Ben Torrance Music on Shopify. That was October 15th, 2023. You purchased the Limitless program.
Damn, yeah. So year and a half then. Yeah,
So coming
crazy.
up, yeah.
Year and a half, yeah, almost. Oh, sick. Okay, great. So some milestones. I purchased the program. The first milestone, as I said, was going in the gym and feeling productive. That was amazing. The next milestone for me was probably that first feeling of confidence I felt. Like the first feeling of like being proud of myself after doing something. I think, that felt like a massive milestone for me. Um, I remember holding myself differently after the first month. I remember kind of like holding myself a little bit more like, I can do this and I will and I want to. And that sense of like, oh, I have some confidence in myself. I think even before, like my posture heading into different places was like I'd go in and kind of like I'd really like feel this heaviness. And like I think
Mhm.
even after that first month, I felt this sense of determination over me. And that was certainly like more of like a perspective milestone, like a self-belief milestone that I was able to kind of like embody, which was massive for me, at the time.
That's cool because it's fun. It's fun to listen to when people say, like, I walked into a room or gym with
Yeah.
more confidence and my posture changed. And
Yeah.
there's elements of why the posture is changing. One, I think you're a little more aware, you're getting stronger, you're kind of using new muscles to stand up straighter. But two, there's a mental burden that's being lifted off, rather than feeling like, hey, I'm not confident, I need to almost protect myself, and just like, no, I'm free to show myself to the world now because I'm starting to become the person that I know I should be and I want to be, or I was before, and I'm getting back there, and I don't need to hide myself anymore.
Come on. So good. some more milestones for me, I think, as you're encouraged to do, like when you're like really beginning the program, videoing yourself all the time. I was videoing all of my movements all the time at the start and posting them in the group. And I think a milestone for me was I videoed my back, and I predominantly had quite a weak back. I've had scapular issues. I've had steroid injections in my left shoulder, all that kind of stuff from volleyball, lots of, whatever. I have quite unstable scapulars, or like, at least that's another thing I'm really working on, is kind of stability of my shoulders, as a lot of people are. But I remember videoing myself after about 6 months of my back, and I've never really had a lot of muscle in my rhomboids or in between my scapula. And I remember I think I was doing like a banded, pull back whilst, scooping and stuff. And I remember doing that, and I looked at the video and I was like, oh damn, I've built up some muscle from all these scoops. And I was like,
Let's go.
I've actually got some kind of rhomboid strength in there, and my back feels like good and strong. It looks strong. It doesn't look weak. It doesn't look like something, if a feather fly into it, I'd crumble. I look like, I kind of look like this like strong, stable back, and my ribs weren't twisted. My core felt really good. And I remember looking at that video thinking, oh yeah, like I'm seeing some progress. I think it's important for people to see that as well, because like a lot of the movements that you do in the first aren't necessarily like, they're building muscle, but they're not building like obvious showy offy muscle, which is a lot, feels
Right.
obvious if you like know your biology a little bit more. But that, you don't leave the first 6 months jacked, obviously, but like you do notice the difference within yourself, in your posture, in the way that you feel, and you do build muscle. But it's not as obvious if you like obviously going to the gym, pumping out like weights for 6 months or whatever. But the muscle that you feel feels important rather than like wasted. And that was
Interesting.
like a really nice feeling to notice that muscle was being built. Like, important muscle was like a foundation. So that was certainly a milestone.
So would you recommend people who are doing our program or going through, recovery, would you recommend that they take some pictures of themselves at the beginning?
Yes. Yeah.
No, you're scared to go look back at those.
I've literally got my phone here, and I was like, I actually could, but I'm not going to. Yes.
You can
Definitely.
send it to me after. We'll throw them on.
Yeah, definitely take pictures and videos of yourself for sure throughout the process. Is really, really good to do that. I kind of briefly touched on this earlier, but like, what an amazing opportunity to get feedback from the Whealth team on your form. Like, it's so good. And, I really utilized that, particularly at the start of the program. I really utilized because what you don't want to do, I imagine, when you come into this program, is like, you want to do the stuff, but you want to do it intentionally. Definitely,
Right.
you'll get the most out of it by doing it intentionally, and by actually like making sure that you've got that mind muscle connection. You're like really, understanding the movement. You're trying to like gauge what you're trying to like strengthen through it and in it. And the feedback that you get on the Facebook community is like really helpful for doing that. So yeah, take some pictures to mark that progress. Definitely.
Yeah, there's a big difference between, if the workouts are about 30 minutes, there's a big difference between just kind of dozing off, and just going through the motions, and then you finish and you're like, what did I really do? There's a difference between intentionally doing the workouts and just kind of going through it. And I think that's another lesson. You need to be intentional if you want to fix these problems within yourself. Like, you
100%.
can't just do the program, like actually do it. Set some intention aside. Think about what you're doing, do it, be critical with yourself, maybe constructively critical with yourself, not just critical. Give yourself some props for trying and doing it, but also hold yourself accountable.
Yeah. Oh yeah, man. It was really hard to do that at the start. I'm not going to sit here and say it's easy to do these workouts every day. And, particularly when you're like used to doing nothing. Like,
Right.
I found despite having that purpose and that progress, if you're in a habit of like, I'm not going to use the word laziness, but if you're in a habit of like, not being used to challenging yourself, then you have to also build a habit the other way to challenge yourself to do it. So like, there were days where I'd wake up and I'd be like, I don't want to do my Whealth workout today. Particularly don't want to film them, but days where I was like, I don't want to do my Whealth workout today, because, for whatever, they're not like, well, to me anyway, for someone who, and this might appeal to more kind of like sportier, or like people
Yeah.
who access sport before. For someone like myself who's like, previous before my back injury, my 5K PB was like 18 minutes, and like,
Woo.
yeah, rapid, honestly. And like, I'd done all this kind of stuff back in the day, and like when you're doing these Whealth workouts and you're doing the small movements, you don't get this like instant gratification through it. So it can be quite like challenging sometimes to really push yourself to like continue going. But yeah, I certainly like, once you start seeing that progress, once you start feeling the goodness that you're getting through it, then that actually like it's, towards the long term, it is actually going to get you back to that position. And that was the thing that kept me going. And those days where I really didn't want to do it was when I was like, okay, but how would I feel if I didn't do this?
Yeah.
Like by not doing it, what am I telling myself? And every time I do it, I feel amazing afterwards. I feel like I'm so glad I did that. My body feels great, and so does my mind. So yeah, it was good.
So also, I'm just curious, can you list off to try to fix your back pain and also shoulder? You mentioned cortisone, chiropractic, back surgery. What other kind of quick things did you try before Whealth? A lot. Drinking.
Yeah, drinking. Yeah. Denial was one of them. What other things I try and do to fix my back injury?
Yeah, denial doesn't work too well, huh?
Physio. I tried physio. I tried like deep tissue massage for a while, which was great and like was nice, but like, oh my gosh, it just did nothing. It's like,
Right.
it felt horrible and then felt good the day after. But yeah, I tried
Deep
that.
tissue
Didn't
is
do
actually
anything.
pretty painful, huh?
Oh my gosh, and the calves as well. It was sucked, but it was good. But yeah, no, like obviously it did nothing. Didn't even scrape the surface. What were some other things that I tried? There was a period where I actually just tried to ignore it, actually, which is quite interesting. There was a period where I tried to be like, I'm fine. My back's like totally good. And I went out for like runs. I started lifting a little bit as well, like lifting heavy, but like I just didn't, in those times, I kind of like, I'd go for a run because I was like braced and like I was really intense and I was like still in the mindset of like, I need to feel completely pain free. I'd come back and then I wouldn't run for like 3 months because I was like, I've just completely ruined my body. Or if I like, would go to the gym and be like, I'm fine, I can just like totally lift weights. I'd go and I'd be like, and I'd like tense up and then I'd like, do a thing and I'd be like really worried. I'd be like, no, am I like going to rip my shoulder? Like, is my back going to like completely explode? And I'd like, kind of go through the motion with no sense of like enjoyment or freedom or like, kind of like, so I tried to just pretend that it wasn't there. And I think that just made it worse. And it made me feel worse as well. Cause then I'd spiral again and be like, oh, I'm back to square one, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So that sucked. I did have as I said, it had the steroid injection. I'm trying to rack my brain. I think I had a steroid injection on my back as well at some point.
Were you taking painkillers as well?
Do you know what? Was I taking painkillers? No, I took the painkillers at the start, but I'm actually generally quite against painkillers, or like not against them. I think I just don't take them. I just don't take painkillers. So no, alcohol was my painkiller, I guess. And nicotine. I was like heavily smoking, and I got addicted to snus when I lived in Norway. And did that, and that sucked too. So
snoozing when it's, man, I cannot imagine being in a place that's dark 9 months a year. I mean, I live in California, and there's levels to. I think about this all the time. There's levels to discipline because, for me, it's like when I was training for my marathon, dude, it probably rained like on any training days in a year ago. It might have rained like on 2 or 3 days that I was running. That was the hardest condition. So it's kind of funny. It's like, okay, I have this environment where the sun is shining a lot of the time. So I think it's a little bit easier to be disciplined. I think I look at other people who are committed to running year round in countries or states where it's like it's super cold and it's super hot. I'm like, we sit around 60 to 75, 78 degrees, like almost year round in San Diego. So for running, it's simple. Also, I don't, so it's kind of funny. I look at that, like, it doesn't take that much discipline. It's like, okay, what are my problems? But still,
Right.
it's tough to show up for yourself all the time. So I think about it. I'm like, how do you make your situation as easy as possible to show up for yourself? There's an element of just like toughing it out. And then also there's like a logistical element as well, where it's like, you got to do it. Like and we do have, I'm sure we probably have some members where they just live in crappy weather year round. And it's like, okay, well, you
I mean,
can't
I live in
use,
England. It's nice
sure.
now, but like, it's not for the other like 360 days of the year.
At the end of the day, that can't be an excuse for not taking care of yourself. Or if
No,
it is, you're just not going to feel great.
no. I think a couple of ways that you can make making a change easier for yourself. I think the first thing you have to do is probably recognize what your motivation is behind it. If you have a why, if you have a reason, then in the moments where you come up against the challenge, then you're able to like navigate, okay, this is a challenge. This is something that's hard. I have to remind myself, why am I doing this? What's the point of this? Why, what do I want to be able to move through, or where do I want to get to? If you don't have a strong why, or if you don't have a strong like this is what I want to do, then actually when you embrace a challenge, it's quite easy to say no to it because you don't have the motivation to move through it. So I think most people on Whealth would have a pretty strong why, because they're like, I want to get back to my life.
Right.
And so I think I had quite a strong why there. That was the first
What
thing.
was your why? Or has that evolved?
Good question.
That's a tough question.
Yeah,
I know
well,
you wanted to get back to living your life, and I know that's enough of a why, but I'm curious if you, as you were going through, because you mentioned that inflection point of, hey, I'm giving advice to younger kids about it starts with you, and
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. So that's a really cool
Yeah.
realization. I'm curious if, looking back on it, if you had any amount of principles, or if you were just like, I'm Ben, and this is not the person that I know I can be.
I think you've named it right there, Cam. That's what I was going to say, was like, I think my why for a lot of the thing was like, I just didn't feel like I was myself. I didn't feel like I was actually able to communicate who I wanted to or what I wanted to with other people around me. And I was not only bringing myself down, but I was just bringing other people in my life down with me. And, I think I saw this future where I kind of just rejected everyone, and where I was going to get to was very dark. Like genuinely, I really did feel at the end of my tether multiple times in those years, where I was like, I genuinely feel like if this is my life, I don't want to live it. I really felt like I got to that point. And I think my why really was like, I can and I could, and there is an opportunity for me to be able to be myself again. Obviously I could talk about kind of more niche things like, I can't wait to run again, that feeling of freedom. I think a big why for me was around, I got ADHD. I was diagnosed in my 20s, and I had really bad anger problems as a child. And, I think what the back pain did was suppress my emotions, and I wasn't able to communicate, I wasn't able to like feel able to access my emotions. I felt so like kind of sedentary and boggy, and I just felt the spectrum of who I am as a person was completely stuck. And so like I wanted to get back to a position where I had an outlet to like release some of this stuckness, and then move into like the expressive person that I knew I was and knew I wanted to be. So that was certainly a why for me. Yeah, another why was like obviously working with the young kids, not being a hypocrite. Like young people not being a hypocrite, and not just standing there telling them you need to change your attitude and then going home and like feeling sorry for myself and snoozing and eating like crap, So like I feel like that was certainly a big thing. I didn't want to be a hypocrite, and wanted to actually be able to like say to them, like, yeah, I'm doing this too. Let's do this together. Was a big thing for me, for sure. My wife was a big why for me, probably would have lost that relationship because I was unbearable to be around. She, would have completely justifiably probably left me, because who wants to be around someone who is just negative about everything all the time? So yeah, lots of whys. I could keep going, but that's probably a few of the like major ones there.
Was your wife at the time, I guess you were dating, was she with you when you, like, before back surgery, after back surgery?
Yeah, it's a good point. Bless her, honestly. It's so funny because I was so active before I met her, and then I kind of had my back injury when I first met her. And she's, she'd never really seen how I was when I was like working out all the time. And so like she's been so kind to kind of be with me from the start to now. And this past kind of year where I've kind of been able to access who I am again in a way that I haven't been able for a long time, which includes like 5-hour trail runs at the weekend. um, um, yeah.
She's like, I kind of like spending time with you on
Yeah.
Saturdays. I don't know if I like this new version of
She
you.
was like, should we backtrack 3 years? She like comes around the corner with a hammer, like come into my back, no, but I think, it's been so cool, like watching her like see me properly, finally, and seeing, there's been some emotional moments between us where, we've kind of been able to be like, oh my word. And I've been able to look her in the eye and be like, I feel fully present with you right now. And I don't feel like I'm elsewhere. I feel genuinely able to enjoy this moment without thinking about, what this moment would feel like without pain. And that feels very, very significant. So yeah, there's certainly this beautiful element where like, I feel like, she didn't really, yeah, she wasn't able to see this part of me, and now she's seeing this part of me, which is great. And yeah, it is funny though, isn't it? She's bless her, she's trying to like keep up with like the running and like all the stuff. She doesn't even like running. In fact, she has this hilarious emotional response to running. We'll go out and she'll hate it in the first 5 minutes, and then she'll have this euphoric moment up a hill, and then she'll like hate it again, and she'll then hate me for taking her on the run. And it's so funny, and then she'll feel great at the end. It's really nice though. It's nice to see her, and nice to see how, this has been able to kind of really help our relationship.
Yeah. I was just thinking about, there are so many joys of like going through this process. Cause I was thinking about what you said earlier when I showed you the picture of the surgery, and you were like, I'm not at the place yet where I am, like, you would, if you currently could not go through that, you said that you would not go through it, right? And I think what's interesting is I have a feeling that there will be a time in the near future where, with all your heart and soul, you're going to be like, I am grateful I went through that and had the surgery, and I wouldn't want it any other way.
Mm,
And for me, it's like, it's super easy to say that because it's been 7 or 8 years since I've had that dark patch,
yeah.
and how my life has changed. It's like, okay, this is my business with Katie and Andrew now. Like, I get to do so many amazing things. I could talk for 10 hours. No one wants to hear me do that. But how much of a blessing my life has been, and how I've been able to, just enjoy different things because of the injury, and what I learned with my relationships and my friendships and my health. And now I can help other people and this and that. But I was just thinking about you, thinking about having those moments where you're present with your wife, and being able to be present and juxtapose. Before, I used to like think about what life would feel like without pain in this moment, so I can't be present. And now I can truly be present. I think it's difficult for people to have a true appreciation or a true sense of presence if you don't have a juxtaposition of some sort of like non-presence to presence. You need to know what not being present feels like to be present, in my mind, and
Yeah,
vice
true.
versa.
Yeah.
You need to know what true pain feels like to know what like not having pain feels like, and
Yeah.
true denial to not have denial. And so that's where I think about that my injury and what I struggled with was the best thing possible.
Mm,
And I think, I don't want to tell you how to think, but I would just say, like, if you're at the place where currently you're like, I almost still wish it didn't happen, I think there's a natural grieving process that you'll go through. But
yeah.
I think if you can think about some of those moments about like, wow, this is a really cool way that I'm thinking now, maybe you'll be even more grateful, and it'll give you more motivation or more gratitude going forward,
Yeah,
but there's
definitely.
no right or wrong way to do it. You're clearly crushing the recovery game. But I think recognizing some of those other things, it can make the process, the struggle that you've gone through, maybe feel a little more worth it, whatever that means.
No, it's good. Yeah, no, appreciate you, Cam. Thanks for sharing as well. Like, I think like, I think you're right. It's definitely going to be a process for me. I think I'm still like, detaching myself from the person that I was to the person that I want to be still. Like that, I'm in kind of year one of me like feeling good, and like there's still like 4 or 5 years of me feeling bad. And as I said, like habits take habits to break. So I'm certainly in that process. I think for me, like the gratitude thing it is real, and it's certainly something I do feel very consistently. And the catalyst for me, insofar as like, you know, what gratitude does for me now is give me the sense of like longevity. That's what I want now from my like fitness journey, is this sense of like, you know, um, being grateful for what I have, and therefore like safeguarding it and treating it really well for the rest of my life, and being able to like, do that. The goal for me now is not this like mountaintop moment. Like the marathon's sick, and that's a cool, amazing thing that I get to be able to do. And I'll probably crash pretty hard after that. Um, crash like physically, like I'll just
My gosh.
sleep and eat like whatever. But I mean more like, that's sick. But actually the goal for me is like to be able to just like enjoy my body and be grateful for the rest of my life. That's the thing. I want to get to my 70s, 80s and be moving. I want to like
Yeah.
the week I die, I want to be able to like hike a mountain. Like that's the vibe for me. So that
Sure.
feels like the long term like gratitude, longevity thing feels like the kind of connectivity there. But no,
Yeah.
I am super grateful. And even having surgery, which you can tell by my like deep breath, is something I'm still like, oh, it feels like a
Yeah.
heaviness, and I
I don't know
often
what
wish
that's like.
yeah, it's hard.
Yeah.
And I think I even feel grateful for that moment, because that night where I was just like up all evening, kind of like reflecting, felt really like I don't know, it felt like a line in the sand moment for me. And perhaps that moment was, a catalyst towards me doing Wealth. You never know. And you kind of you have to understand some of these journeys. Sometimes things get worse before they get better. And I think, yeah, I'm certainly in the process of trying to be more grateful for what I have in my life. So it's good. Yeah. And Wealth's been great for that. Like I'm pretty sure Andrew says that all the time in the Facebook chat.
Yeah.
Like, what are you grateful for? It's great. Really, really good.
It definitely does a lot of times have to get worse before it gets better. And I know that with myself, and I know that with our members. I have this like I have to remind myself that, because one of my main roles at Wealth is I will do a lot of the consultations, and I'll talk to people who are considering our program. And inevitably, people sometimes have the conversation what feels like preemptively, meaning they are like, yeah, I want to start the program, I want to get out of pain, blah blah blah, and then they kind of fall off. They fall off the edge of the earth, and they don't show back up. And so it's like, okay, that person didn't join. And then you have a lot of people that I chat with who like literally joined that day of or the week of, right? And I had someone text me like 2 days ago, and it was like, hey, it's me again. And I looked back at her text string, and like I had talked to that person 6 months ago, and
Wow.
they were
Yeah.
like, I'm signing up today. And I was like, great, and then they didn't sign up. So I was like, hey, are you like, what's going on? Didn't respond. And then I'm looking back, I don't delete my texts because I want to know like those conversations that I had with
Nice.
people.
Yeah.
And he's like, yep, like it got worse. And I'm ready to do it, and I think like everyone has to, I don't know if everyone has to, but a lot of people have to reach some sort of like true rock bottom to make a dramatic change. And I think that rock bottom can be an excellent place to start.
Yeah. Great.
um
I agree. You have
but
to be ready for it as well, right? If you do it half-heartedly, then you're not going to get the most out of it. Like, you have to be ready to change. The first step to change is the recognizing that you want something to change, isn't it? And sometimes, as you said, like being at your lowest is like, could be the mechanism towards actually saying yes to that. So yeah, you're right.
yeah, I wish, like, part of me in my mind wishes that people didn't have to suffer so much to do our program or to do something about it. Because like it hurts me to know that people suffer a lot, and then that suffering causes them to do something great. But also, when I look back on my life, and I know it's the same with a lot of people, I needed to be in a really, really dark place to just have this incredible healing. And like, I think ironically, if my pain wasn't
Yeah.
so bad, I probably would have just pushed off my injury. And like, who knows, you know, maybe in an alternate universe, I'd be a better, worse athlete. I don't know. But I'm just so content and happy with where I am now. And I credit
Yeah.
a lot of that to going through one of actually the toughest challenge I've ever been through in my life. I will say
Right.
that there has not
Yeah.
been a tougher thing in my life yet that I've gone through than this. So a life defining obstacle. And now that I'm through it, I'm so grateful that it was like the craziest experience to go through.
Yeah. Yeah. Same for me, man. Yeah. Most life defining moment, most challenging thing that I've ever had to go through as well. And I
Yeah.
totally agree. You know, like sometimes I reflect on the person I was before and after my back surgery, and like, you know, yes, I was into mental health, and yes, I was kind of like had this kind of like desire to support communities and want to like help
Mm.
other people with that. But you know, I think my ego was huge, man. Like I you know, being like a, you know, sporty 6 foot plus guy, you know, like my ego was massive, and then I had this back surgery and it proper humbled me. And you know,
Right.
I'm so grateful for that. Like it was great. It was such a, you know, it was such an important experience for me to do that. And you know, you never really know, do you, where you could be, you know, if things don't happen. But I'm certainly grateful for like who I am now in comparison to who I was then, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, so what sport did you play semi pro?
Beach volleyball.
Beach volleyball. Wow. Is that
Yeah,
a,
being a Californian, you must know a little bit about that, right? Yeah, yeah.
oh man, when you throw me on any sort of land sports, I'm not very good. I can throw a baseball. I cannot throw a football. I can run though. So like
Yeah, 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 yeah.
no jumping, no lateral stuff, but throw me in a straight line, I can run pretty well. I ran so yeah, this is interesting. So my first like marathon I ran a 3:18, and
Damn,
then
bro.
yeah, I ran that at like 200 pounds, and I trained for a
Speedy.
while. And then I ran, then a few months later, I ran a half marathon in 128, and then I ran a 125 half marathon, and then I ran a 449 mile. But those like little things,
Rapid,
I would
man.
have, I don't know if I, who knows, maybe I would have been good at them or not. But going through the injury, learning how to build up all the basics of mobility and getting in tune
Hmm.
with my body, I think it's just made me a lot wiser of an athlete and balancing my training to like, okay, you got to give it gas, but you also need to have those days where they're super chill. Um, so that's been super fun to like appreciate pushing myself in different domains moving forward from there, you know. So I don't really even know where I was going with that.
That's all good. No, it's great. What I was going to say was, after the podcast, I'm going to hit you up with some more questions around running, if that's okay, because
Absolutely.
I'm still getting into it. Like, you know, probably the main question is like, do you wear barefoot shoes? And
Oh, good question. Yeah. I mean, I think if people are still listening, they got to be interested in health and fitness in general. So, you know, that's interesting. I, for a few years, like, and so Ben's asking this question because I assume, in our Limitless program, you know, we talk about the benefits of barefoot training. And so I actually always still lift in Vivo barefoot or I lift barefoot. I just love that connection. For a while, was a barefoot running evangelist. Like it has to be done barefoot. And I think my stance has changed on that. What I personally, and it's, I want to take a step back. Like I'm not the fastest run in the world. So this is just my perspective as someone who's been okay at running. I think what was helpful for me was starting with a barefoot shoe in the sense that I think it helped me and I've seen it help other people learn to be light on the feet and have a more relaxed gait potentially. Cause I'll go and run with people in my run group who have no connection to the ground and they're slamming their feet on the ground. I listen to myself run versus other people. It is quick, it's fast, it's light, it's springy.
hmm,
So I think it's not like barefoot is necessarily going to fix your mechanics, but I do think if you take a lighter shoe, potentially, that can be a helpful aspect of potentially reprogramming your running gait. So I went from running in the Vivo, but then I started training for a marathon. I was like, okay, I'm running probably 30 ish miles a week. So then I went from the Vivo and I switched to the Ultra Escalante. Um, For me, a non-negotiable is having a toe box with a lot of room, because personally I'm like, hey, I don't want to go run a half marathon and have my feet be blistering because the toe box is too crammed. So that's something that I'm still pretty dead set on, is like, get a comfortable shoe that's not cramping in on your feet. But I'm less of an evangelist on like, it can't have any padding, So the Ultra Escalante I like personally because it's a zero drop, it's a wide toe box, but it has
Yeah.
some padding.
Yeah.
Um, and now, like, the more I look at it, I think the shoe is definitely important, but also kind of your gait is important as well. And I feel like my running is gonna be more or less the same, depending on whatever shoe I put on. And then
Yeah.
also too,
Nice.
like,
Nice. Yeah.
I'll do some running on the beach and stuff, and strengthen the feet. So
Nice.
I think
Yeah.
when you're just getting some mileage in, like, it's okay to throw in some other shoes. But if you're doing that, definitely be cognizant of really not just running, but if I want to do a performance event and these are the considerations that this gear has on my body, what do I need to do in the gym to support those
Yeah.
considerations to
Yeah.
be good at it and healthy?
That's it. That's it. That's what I'm finding now for sure. Like the pain I'm getting is definitely something to do with my arches. And like, I've been running in kind of some pretty hefty, chunky shoes. And, I think like, as you said, it's like, okay, I've certainly worked on my like cadence and my gait. Like, my friend's been helpful with that because he's a super runner. We've been practicing I do lots of warm up drills as well to help with my cadence, lots of like footwork and kind of like, that kind of stuff. But yeah, I'm certainly like, I've just dropped down my kind of heel drop a little bit. And with the trail runs that I do, because my marathon's actually trail, it's running through a forest when I go there. So like, yeah, I'm really trying to work on that. But I think it's good. I've certainly noticed like weaknesses in my body now that I'm upping my volume. So I'm certainly like, in a moment I'll go work out with my dad, and it's going to be, as I mentioned, like foot in sand, hips, like, noticing the stuff that's been kind of like, yeah, flaring up a little bit, but fine.
The other thing too is, I think I look back, I'm no longer training for the marathon. I did that and I was like, man, it's just, I don't want to say you're gonna be uncomfortable. Like, running that long is typically not comfortable. I think doing the strength training on the side is super appropriate.
Oh yeah.
It's absolutely necessary. And then
Yeah.
also just being smart about, just like anything, the progressive overload,
Yeah.
intensity, volume that you put on, like, that's
Yeah.
important.
No, exactly. Yeah, I'm trying
Yeah.
to do that. Yeah, ChatGPT's been helping me with a little running three times a week,
Hey,
a
there you
little,
go.
little program going on there. I'm not because I'm not running to time, because I'm just running for the purpose of doing it, and like that kind of personal significance. I'm
Mhm.
not trying to set myself a target, so I'm doing a tempo/interval and easy, and then a long trail one at the weekend, which seems to be working for me at the moment. So yeah.
So I think this is a good full circle. I know I kind of opened with it. Your marathon, it's very serendipitous. It's 26 miles to the hospital that you had the microdiscectomy at 3 years ago. So I'll be thinking about that on August 23rd. Um, yeah, what is that? You said you're doing it to raise awareness for something. Is that correct?
Yeah, so raising money actually for the charity that I work for, the charity sphere that I work for, which is helping young people get into work. So yeah, so I think the link there for me was, I wasn't actually planning on raising money for charity in general, and then we actually had to not hire a third person because we're like a small charity based in where I live, and we help people, as I mentioned, who are suffering with like chronic unemployment for whatever reason. So I
Mm,
decided actually, um, my why for doing that marathon is very strong, to do the marathon, to signify this kind of like passing of the guard, like to signify this sense of like, I'm moving on in my life. I'm no longer where I was.
mm,
But I thought I could also pair it with like something that had like, kind of a meaningful impact in the community that I'm in too. And it wasn't just this self-serving thing, which is okay and great and fine. I was totally allowed to do that. But I
definitely.
wanted it to have like a wider significance. So yeah, I'm raising money for the charity I work for. And I'm not sure when this will go out, but like if people wanted to check it out, they can obviously go
Yeah.
to my BJT Wellbeing page, and I'll have a link. I'm going to do that this weekend, but I'll have a link towards the page, and I'm going to talk about chronic pain, chronic unemployment, the link there for some of our young people too, because there are some kind of really, similar themes around stuckness and kind of not being able to recognize how to move forward. So yeah, that's what I'm doing for that too.
That's so interesting, because I think there's so many different ways in which people get wrapped up in these horrendous cycles of pain. And from my understanding, yours kind of stemmed from like the injury side first, and then it started to affect other areas of your life, right? Because is that correct?
But yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Because there are other instances, that's like, okay, the disc herniation, the sciatica, this sports injury, and that was the cascade. Whereas I did a podcast with the member Joel, and he had sciatica, but then he got addicted to oxy, and then kind of everything else in his life started spiraling. But there seems to be obviously situations in which maybe it's not a physical injury that starts the cycle, but someone loses a job or someone loses a family member or something like that. And then they become depressed, and then they're not going to the gym, and then they're not taking care of themselves. And then they're dealing with a disc herniation or back pain.
Right. Yeah. The other
And
way
it's
around
like,
for sure.
yeah,
For sure.
it can attack in multiple angles, but it's like, so what are you seeing in terms of the similarities for the people who are unemployed, and what kind of pains are they dealing with? And
Yeah, damn. Yeah. Good question. I mean, the similarities really are around not recognizing that you have a choice to do something about it. I think, the main cause, I reckon, for the people who come on our program for whatever reason. So like a lot of them grew up in care, or like came out of the prison system, or like referred to us from like the National Health Service because of mental health and stuff like that. So, we get loads, or people on benefits. So they're just claiming kind of like universal credit, which is kind of like taxpayers, money to help people try and find work when they're off work or whatever. And I think, the general theme is, for whatever reason, they feel out of control. They feel like anxiety is drowning them. They're unable to take this first like kind of step, that they can't take hold of anything in their life. They're like trying different things, but the more they face rejection, the more they the more they face rejection, the more that narrative is solidified for sure. So I think the kind of the general like mesh, or the kind of like collaborating factor between those two, is that sense of like, okay, this is out of my hands, this is out of my control, I can't do anything about this, and therefore I won't. Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a good way to wrap it up. Someone's still listening to this podcast right now, about almost an hour and 45 in.
Come
First off,
on, shout
yeah,
out
I
to
know,
that
right?
person.
But so I feel like if someone's still listening right now, maybe they like listening to us to like laugh or talk about whatever, have a good time. But got to imagine too, just what you were talking about hit a lot of different facets of life. But potentially someone listening is having physical pain, mental pain, disc herniation, sciatica, maybe unsure, how to take that first step. Like, what would you want them to know? And then also, to tag on another question, like, what would you, yeah, let's start with that. And I also want to ask you, like, what would you tell yourself looking back now before you started the program? Because
So yeah, great. I totally do that. So the first question was, what would you tell people listening to the podcast who are experiencing the pain now?
yeah.
Yeah. Let me have a think. What would I say? I'd say something that they've heard before if they're listening to this, which is, it's a process. It's a process. I think, some things that perhaps we haven't necessarily talked about is, make sure to celebrate wins and to be proud of yourself. I would say something about, give yourself grace in the things that, if something doesn't work straight away, or if you have a flare up, or if something goes along the way, like, don't see that as like square one, but see that as like just part of the process again. And, for me, I had flare ups every single weekend. It was like literally on cue. Every Sunday morning I'd have a flare up, and I'd get out of bed and I'd go like this, and I literally wouldn't be able to tie my shoes. And, that started being like once every 3 weeks, and then once every, 4 weeks. And then it became once every like 2 months. And then, now I never have them ever. So I think like,
Right.
if I had had one of those flare ups whilst I was doing the program, which I did, if I had said to myself, well, actually nothing's working, and I just stopped, then I wouldn't be where I am now. So I'd certainly say like, yeah, it's a process. Recognize the wins for sure, and mark those moments and feel proud of yourself and share them with people and say like, look what I'm doing, look what I've done. That's certainly important. um, I'd say give yourself some grace as well. I'd certainly, we haven't really touched on this, but I'd say like the holistic stuff is so important. Like the diet, the way you breathe, the stress at work, the relationships you have. I've just started therapy myself in the last month because I'm finally in a position to do so. It's actually taken me years of my life, but I finally, it sounds weird that, doesn't it? You usually think someone would start therapy right in the depths of their stuff, but actually I've started it because I'm actually like now in a position to do it, because before I actually wasn't ready for it. And like, I think, I don't really know where I was going at, but I think like, it's just,
Yeah,
it's
you're
just
talking about
great to see.
the
Yeah, the
holistic
holistic,
nature.
that's it. Yeah. Really, really look after your head and look after your body as well with what you put into it. I think is so important. I'd also say like quick top tips from me would probably be like, um, get off, even though Whealth is on social media, like get off social media, stop getting on those Reddit back pain things. Like, stop
Yeah.
Googling your symptoms. You've heard this many times before from the Whealth guys, but it really doesn't help. The more you obsess over it, the more you're going to find answers that don't exist. So I think, really ensuring that, you're listening to the right stuff, and when I say listening to the right stuff, I mean your body, and like from my experience, the Whealth guys as well are great, and you can really trust that information. At least I can trust that information because it
Yeah.
worked for me and it's worked for thousands of other people. So why wouldn't you trust that? Um, so yeah, those are some top tips from me. And what other things would I say? Do
Yeah,
what you
I think
can. Do what you can. So yeah, I could keep going, but I'll stop.
yeah, yeah. We could open up another conversation. No, I
I'm sorry. I'm
appreciate that.
sorry.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, there's so many different ways to tackle it. I think giving yourself some grace, and one piece too that I have seen within our members, it's tale old as time. They're having success with the program, and then they have a flare up, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, I'm back to square one. Like, I was doing so great, and like the pain's back." Or like, it's like, all right, well, it's back right now, but also you've had 4 great weeks since it hasn't been there. So you got to zoom out and be like, aside from today, how often were you having these flare ups?
Right.
Every day, every week.
Right.
It's been
Right.
4 weeks. Like, it's not going to all go away immediately. Like, if you're trying to make a change, you might have like a little relapse or a little dip down. We can't expect it to just get better and better and better and better for most people every single day. So if you do have a little struggle as you're climbing up the mountain, you drop down a little bit, that doesn't mean you need to skyrocket yourself all the way back down. Just recognize, hey, it's a little dip right now. I can get better. It is, not catastrophize that situation.
Exactly.
Yeah, people have that. But awesome. And then like telling yourself, what would you want yourself to know?
Um, don't take before pictures at your parents' house. It's a joke. It's a joke. What I would say to myself is this pre Whealth or pre surgery?
It could be what I know you've gone through a lot as you're like kind of wrapping up some of those because you've had I know you've gone through a lot with like the debt and the drinking and the surgery and that sort of thing. And I know they're probably like, but let me ask you this. When you think about back when you were at the end of the rope and you're like, I don't know if I want to live life like this, if it's worth it. And now here you are. Like, what would you tell that person?
Oof. Well,
Yeah, that's tough, huh?
yeah, man. I mean, the first thing I'd say, like, without like, you know, um, like, saying it for the podcast, but like, first thing I would say is do the Whealth program quicker than you started it.
Yeah.
TBH, yeah, genuinely, because it like, it was just a catalyst for all the reasons. So I would say that as like a general answer. I
Yeah.
think the other thing I'd say, what would I say to that person? Probably something like it's hard, but it's worth it. Um, I'd say that. I'd say something like,
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah,
yeah,
because you were talking
yeah,
about how it was like, even when you want to get out of the situation, you're looking at the program being like, oh, it's not easy to do these workouts, you know, but
Yeah.
it's hard to do it, but it's harder to not do it. Right.
Right. For sure. So yeah, I'd
Awesome.
say that. I'd say that. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, man.
Hey, well, I do you have any goals for your marathon? Don't stop, run the entire thing, enjoy it, time.
Yeah. Don't take any pictures. No, I'm sorry. That's such a bad joke. I won't say any more of that. I think the goal for my marathon is just to complete it. I
Yeah.
it's so stupid, isn't it? But I think, as you said earlier, I think for like athletes or like for anyone really, or like someone like myself I've got quite like a I want to do stuff like attitude. I'm
Yeah.
already thinking about my next like extreme challenge, and I'm like, I'm going to do an ultra in September. I'm going to do 100K of the Lake District. I think that's just stupid. But I
Yeah.
think my marathon goal is to be present. That's my
I love
marathon
that.
goal. I'm going to
I
be
love that.
present with myself. It's really sweet actually. Like my family are going to be around. My wife's going to do a bit. Like I've got some of my school friends around, and there's like the run club that I run with as well down here. They're going to do like 10K with me.
So you're making
There's
a name. You're making a name for yourself out there, huh?
I think like I'm gonna have people run like different sections with me along the way, but I've segmented the last 10K to do it on my own, just to kind of
Nice.
like take that last 10 to like be really present with myself. And I think my job is really busy. I'm kind of in a stage of my life where like I'm really busy all the time. I'm like exercising, I'm doing stuff, and my life was normal and all this kind of stuff. And even it was even funny for me reaching out to you, Cam, because I was like, you know, I haven't taken a moment even within myself to mark the gratitude or like the significance of where I am now. I booked this marathon in as like let's send this, let's do this, this will be fun. And I haven't necessarily been like, oh, like my life has changed. I haven't actually really thought like that. So like I'm going to utilize this moment to recognize that. And even this podcast and doing this is like another thing. Cause I really honestly like I'm communicating as if this has been like something that's been going on for me, and I've
Yeah.
been communicating a lot with my friends or my wife. I haven't really I've with my wife we've marked this stuff like a little bit, but I haven't done anything to really mark this. And so like this marathon is me marking this as like as you said, like I'm free from pain dictating my life. I can step into this new chapter of me being able to be myself, as we talked about, and able to say yes to like a life that I want to live, which feels amazing. So that's my goal, is to be present with that. And then whatever emotions come up in that last 10K, I imagine I'm going to cry,
Yeah,
and that's
you will.
great. So I'm like, I'm ready to cry. I'm ready to let it out. I'm ready to be present in that 10K. I'm not going to be looking at my clock. I'm not going to be looking at my watch,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I um yeah, I have two thoughts on that. On the crying, I'll get to that. And also just you doing the podcast. I mean, this is going to go up on our YouTube and Spotify, and it'll live there. So literally thousands of people will listen to this story, which is, if anyone is listening to this story, unless like, and they hang on throughout the podcast, that means they need this conversation likely, which is,
Right. Yeah.
it's a trip. Cause like, unless you have back pain or back surgery, you're probably not going to really listen to this conversation. So
Right.
just you sharing that, I think, is really, it's incredible. I mean, I was looking at your Instagram bio, and you're like recovering from back surgery. It inspires me, because it was already tough enough to not, I didn't do back surgery. So it's really cool that, you're showing what can be done. And on the thought of crying, like when I did my first marathon, cause you'll look out on social media, or you'll see people crying at the end of the race of marathon. And it's like, if you haven't done that, you kind of laugh at them. You're like, oh, whatever, it's just a marathon. But the significance for me when I cried partially was, there was a lot of, I felt very proud of myself. And what I felt proud of was not like, yes, it was the time of the first marathon marked, like, you spent a lot of time, but it was like waking up early and eating around training, like all of the little micro
But
actions.
yeah, it's the journey to get there.
Yeah. And so then
100%.
what I realized with that was like, 3 hours and 18 minutes for that marathon, or an hour 25 for the half marathon, versus 200 training sessions for that. It's like less than 1% of the time that you're focused on, when really like the other 99% of the time is like preparing for that. And it did make me realize, like, I genuinely enjoyed the process of training up for that marathon, and that
Yeah.
made the marathon that much sweeter. But then once you finish that first marathon, if you don't really find a sustainable process, you're not really going to do that thing long term, because that thing that you're chasing long term is like, you only get to show that off like here and there. And then the rest of the time, it's the non sexy stuff. It's like, it's cool, I'm sure, for you to be like, hey guys, I'm running, I'm doing this marathon. You tell yourself and all these different things. But at the end of the day, it's like you need to show up for yourself day in and day out. And if you
Yeah.
can't learn to appreciate that, it's going to be difficult to make change or do anything great.
For sure. For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I can't wait to cry.
Yeah, there we go. Ben, I'll be rooting for you.
Thanks, man. I'm going to have to go, by the way. My dad just texted me saying he's down at the beach.
All
He's
right, go.
got to get this
Hey,
workout in.
and enjoy. All right, Ben. Hey,
Thanks,
take
man.
care. All right,
It was
adios.
great chatting to you. And I'll catch up with you. I'll text you. If there's any more questions you have, I'm more than happy to get back to you. Whatever you need from me, I'm here for Whealth. I love it. I love you guys. I think you're brilliant. I'm not just saying, I wasn't planning on saying this, but you guys initiated me changing my life, and I appreciate you for that. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys.
Hey, we'll go crush that. I'll be thinking about you, man.
Thanks, bro.
All right. Hey, cheers.